Thanks for joining us for our final Lunch and Learn of 2021. So today we are covering the topics of when the holidays hurt. So how the holidays can be challenging after someone special, someone important in our lives has died. Shanna is going to be leading us through our conversation today, through the presentation. And to let people know, we're aiming to have a 10 to 15 minute space at the end for you to ask your questions, for us to engage in more of a dialogue. That being said, I want to let people know, as always, if you have any questions come up throughout the conversation today, just hop into the chat. I'll be answering questions in there, looking for themes. I can ask Shanna questions, or we can wait till the end. You can also direct message today as well in the chat feature if you have any questions you're not wanting to share publicly. And you can also email us. I will include our email in the chat today as well. As this is our final Lunch and Learn session of 2021, wanting to let people know that we are looking towards 2022 and our series that will resume in January. And so we are really hoping to get your feedback, your input about topics that you would like to see included in next year's Lunch and Learns. And so before we get going today, we're hoping to share a poll with everyone who has joined us today to get a bit of your feedback around what you'd like to see covered. So we are going to be putting up that poll today. I'm not able, oh, there it is. There we go. And so we're hoping people can let us know what future topics would you like to see. And we'll give you a few minutes this morning to let us know.
And I'll add, Sophie, I'll add that it's our hope that in the coming next few months to be able to bring in some new voices. So, you know, people who are working in these particular areas that may be able to add their experience and expertise and speak to these from a new perspective. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to bring in some new voices to support this Lunch and Learn community.
Thanks, Shanna.
Yeah.
We'll give folks a few more moments to let us know. And to let people know as well, our next Lunch and Learn in 2022 will be on January 26th. So later in January, give everyone a chance to get acquainted with the year and settled in as well. Wonderful. Okay, thank you everyone for your feedback there. And I will hand it over to Shanna today.
Okay, we'll get going. I want to acknowledge that, you know, if you've shown up today to this in this middle of this busy season, but also in the middle of an overwhelming, often time and grief, that I'm gonna assume that a few pieces of information or offering about how to move through this holiday season is something that you're looking for. And so we're going to have that in this session. But I also just want to recognize that none of these things may fit for you this year, and that's okay. So please, it is an offering. Gather up what fits for you, for your family, and you know, leave behind the rest. And so it's my hope that it does feel gentle. There's an understanding that sometimes you just don't have capacity to do, you know, planning or prepping or rituals, whatever we're going to talk about today. And so if that's where you're at, that's okay. Maybe tuck these away for future holiday. That's right. So just want to acknowledge that one of the reasons that this time of year or other cultural celebrations can be really, really tricky is that I think regardless of your religious practices or these celebrations, they usually revolve around family and community. And so the absence of your person is even larger. And I wrote down there on that, we talk about waves of grief a lot. And I think in the grief world that's talked about, but that the holidays can feel like a tidal wave. I wanted to bring in and offer you voices of people who we've worked with, who we know, who have shared what it's like versus just me talking about a plan or how to cope with the holidays. And you may find some resonance for yourself in some of these. So I don't really remember the first Christmas. I just felt like I was swallowed by darkness. I was consumed with thoughts of him every second of every minute of every day. I don't even remember being able to think about what my other kids needed. This is from Pam after the loss of her son. He died, he was 23, and she had younger kids, but it was just, in hindsight, hard to even consider what they may have needed. This is from Joey, who is 17. And he said, my mom said that she didn't want to celebrate Christmas, like at all. No decorations, no gifts. I was fine with it. I just wanted to skip Christmas. But I came home from school and the house is decorated and she's bought gifts and now I have to go buy gifts too. I'm so confused. The plan that he thought changed. This is Carla. She has 4 kids, and this is after the death of her husband. I'm taking the kids to Disneyland. People are judging me, but for one day, I just want all of us to be able to ignore the painful feelings that we face every single day without him here. I wanted to sleep through the holidays that first year, but it seemed like the kids needed to keep the traditions she'd always been a part of, so I did my best. It helped them feel like she was still with us in a way. And this was Mark with his 2 daughters after the death of his wife. And so you may find yourself resonating with, some of these, one of these. I think my hope is that you walk away with permission to shape these holidays in the way that you need to, knowing there's so many ways to do it. I also wanted to offer you this. We had this in one of our very first lunch and learns. It's called the Griever's Bill of Rights, and it's put together by Alan Wolfelt. But I would encourage you to take a screenshot or something, find this on the internet, keep it on your phone in this season where there may be a lot of expectations from other people, there may be a lot of stress. You may have expectations for yourself, and we're going to talk about that. But just to come back and remind you about what you have the right to always, but particularly at this season, maybe when it feels especially challenging. As we move forward in this conversation about the holidays, I just want to acknowledge the work of my colleagues at the Children's Grief Center, but also in the wider grief community. So my work here with you is to gather the best resources, our own from the CGC and also others who are working in the grief community, and offer them to you. And so that's what I've done. Special thanks to my colleague, Stacy, who shared her work on the holidays. And so, yeah, just want to kind of acknowledge that. I think the last piece I want to acknowledge is that if you want to go back, I think, Sophie, you might have did you put the link to the previous Lunch and Learns in the chat? I can't hear her, but anyway, she'll put that in the chat. And so feel free, if I mentioned some things from previous conversations and you want to go back and grab some of that information, there's a link there. So this is going to hold the frame of our conversation. And like I said, I really want to approach it with gentleness. And I even chose gray. I was commenting gray font for this slide, so it's not like visually too stark. And also there's just, I hope, a gentleness to this, that these are offerings, these are ideas. And I hope the variation is here for you to find what works. But this is the way we're going to kind of hold the conversation. Realistic expectations, planning and choosing. You might need to reconsider the traditions. And if you choose, to bring in rituals of remembering. So we're going to kind of break each of those down. Let me go back. I also want to acknowledge that if this is your first Christmas, as I said, you may just be tucking these away for the future. However you get through the Christmas season, the holiday season is a-okay. And I think sometimes what I've noticed is that in the holidays, the first Christmas, people are very aware that it's going to be painful for you. Often you're aware it's going to be painful, and there is some planning that happens around that. the expectations of other people as well. Maybe that it will be challenging. When you're in year 2, 4, 5, 7, it can still be or as challenging or more challenging because the support around you may change. Definitely have had families where, year 3, they actually have to reach out to ask for somewhere to be for Christmas. And so just want to acknowledge that for all the variety of experiences of people who are here. So take what you need and you can leave behind what doesn't fit for you. Okay, so that realistic expectations. I just want to emphasize that I think in all of the things I'm going to talk about today, it really is about a conversation with your family members. And so that begins with acknowledging out loud for yourself, for your family, that things are going to be different this holiday season and it likely will be hard. That really just can set everybody up for a shift in expectations rather than just assuming either there will be nothing or you'll do all the things you did and it will feel the same. So just acknowledging that, normalizing that. And I like the second one, which is it's okay to aim for peace, not joy. And maybe one of the ways to that peace is to consider what is reasonable for you, reasonable for your family in this new normal that you're currently occupying. And whether that's first Christmas or sixth Christmas or 15th, give yourself permission to cut out what isn't reasonable for you right now. If you've always done cards, because I don't know if a lot of people do Christmas cards anymore, but if you've always done Christmas cards and you don't want to do them, scrap it. If you don't want to buy as many gifts, right? Like all of these pieces that maybe used to bring you joy, and that often can be very challenging. It's sad that these things are not feeling joyful, and there's a recognition this may not continue. This is for this year. All of these pieces, they are something you can choose for what you need this year, and it can change again next year. Give yourself and your kids permission to not live up to the expectations of others, whether that's that you are celebrating the holidays in the way that they think you should, like the comment from Carla who said people were judging her for going to Disneyland, or she felt judged, that there was this idea that she was running away from grief, or she wasn't celebrating the holiday in the way the kids needed. Just give your kids, they may be emotional in ways that are unexpected or that aren't really great behavior. And so there's just a lot of permission and room to not be meeting the expectations of other people. And then I love this last one. Sometimes you won't know what works and what doesn't for you until you guys have tried it and it worked or it bombed. And so there is plenty of room to just figure that out as you go. So I want to give you an example of that because I love this one. This was shared by my colleague, and we had permission to share all of these, but this was from Julie, and I think she's about 16. And so she said that first Christmas we stayed home. It was just the three of us, her dad and her sister and herself. We thought that we didn't want to be around people. So they made that choice. They thought that they did make a plan. They made the right call for themselves in that moment. But everything went wrong. The food burned. The gifts were a flop. We were all trying so hard to make it what it had always been. It was too much pressure. It wasn't until after that I wondered why in the world, is how she put it, why in the world did we think it was a good idea to be alone in our house without her, trying to do all of the things that she did? We should have just gone to McDonald's. And so I think that's kind of where we're going to go here, is that you get to make a plan and you get to choose. Since this is a parent lunch and learn series, we're talking about how to do this alongside your family members, how to include your kids in the planning, in the thinking about what traditions, events, and gatherings that they want to go to, and they really don't feel like they can. And so that's a really important piece here. I feel a little hesitant offering you this, especially if this is your first Christmas, around make a plan. But, as you all already know, grief makes it hard to remember things. It makes it hard to concentrate. And so you could literally write down these ideas and they can change at any time. But you want to kind of make a plan of where you want to be, who you want to be with, and then communicate that with other people. It's likely you have experienced what a lot of grievers experience, which is sort of a shift in their whole life about feeling obligated to other people in the way perhaps they had before. And that may come forward a lot at the holidays, which could actually be a gift to you and to your family, that there could be more limit setting, that it's you're able to communicate that with other people about what your family needs. So another thing just to consider is those situations where the absence of that person might be most felt. So oftentimes for parents who've lost a spouse, it might be Christmas Eve, where you and your partner used to set out the gifts for your kids and or build things, put them together. And there is a sense that that's kind of what's happening in our community, is parents are staying up late and they're together and they're putting out gifts, and you don't have your partner who used to do those things with you. For your kids, it could be totally different. I have one young man who his dad was the person who sort of, it wasn't high energy or anything, or it wasn't a really big deal, but his dad was the person who came, woke them up. He had a rhythm to how he did it. Turned on the tree, began making waffles, and so the morning was toughest for that young guy. I want to highlight these two go together, these last two, but normalize for your kids that there might be grief and sadness, and there will also be excitement and joy, and that's totally fine. Of course. Kids, we've talked in a previous session about how kids grieve in doses. So they move in and out in a way that's a bit different than adults, and they will most likely have the same thing around the holidays. So there will be excitement about it, and there may be sadness. I want to highlight that also. I mean, I think a lot of us are this way, but for grief and kids, it's because they're kind of pushing down the grief, pushing down the sadness and the missing and the longing. It may kind of come out pretty big after the holidays in that week following. So just want to highlight that permission giving if you need to hear it. I speak for just so many parents who have come through the center, and I echo their voice to you. So it's okay to say when you're asked to do something, even if people are trying to be helpful, trying to be inclusive, loving you, wanting to support you, we're just not up to it this year. You don't owe any more of an explanation. We're just not up to it this year. It's also okay to change your mind and your plans at any time. Like Joey, whose mom first said, I'm not decorating, I'm not doing any gifts, and then changed her mind and decorated the whole house. It would be helpful to communicate that, though. He was confused. So just have a conversation, but this is okay for you. It's okay for them to have a plan and for it to change. It's okay to skip the holidays altogether if that's what you need to do. I think one of the things that we do usually offer is consider if simplifying can work first, so that there's a simplified holiday versus skipping. But if you need to skip it, you can skip it, you can simplify it. It's okay. And it's okay to have an exit plan. In fact, I would recommend you have an exit plan. If you're going to be somewhere, someone may offer to pick you up, drive you, I don't know. Maybe give that a second thought. Have a way to go if you or your family need to go, if it just becomes too overwhelming in the moment. Sometimes you can't know until you're there. So here's those questions to consider as you make your plan. The where, I highlighted that. Think about that. It matters. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to be? Where does your family want to be? It might be in your house, it might be at your parents', it might be on a beach in Mexico, it might be out on a hike. Where do you want to be? And who do you want to be with? How do you want to spend your energy? Kind of already spoke to that a little bit, but giving yourself permission to cut out things. If it's important to you to have a holiday dinner for your family, but the capacity to cook a dinner and still be present and try to find peace, it's not going to be there. You could find a different way to do that. Ignore the shoulds. You probably don't need me to tell you that, but I just want to put that in there in case the things that you should be doing. And don't forget to recharge. You can find little moments for yourself. Maybe buy a gift for yourself. Maybe it's after your kids are in bed. I don't know. But find a little time for yourself to recharge. We're going to talk a little more about that. I'm going to just check in with my notes here to see if I'm missing anything I want to offer you. Okay. This recharging, I just want to offer you this to honor your instincts about what you need, and also to honor your kids' instincts about what they are needing. One of the strongest influences on how we're coping, on our nervous system, on our body, is the people around us. And so I know that when folks set limits and choose to not be with people who may want to be with you, sometimes there's feelings of guilt or you feel bad about that. And I really want to give you some language and an understanding about why that's actually so valuable and so critical, if that's what you choose to do. So just one thing here. To be regulated is really to be in a state that feels comfortable in your body, that feels you're able to manage your emotions, you're able to manage what's coming up for you, even if they're big feelings, fearful, sad, angry, missing your person. There's too much energy. Regulation is the ability to kind of bring those back to your baseline, and everyone's baseline is different. When we're getting off that baseline, which is very common in times of high stress or in the holidays, generally without grief, but the holidays with grief, you might move off your baseline. And one of the ways that we get back there is co-regulation. So I'm giving you these fancy words, but they matter for you and they matter for your kids. Co-regulation happens when you connect to another person, you attune to them, they attune to you, and that person is grounded and regulated themselves. And that allows you or me, our internal state that's feeling off baseline, to kind of come back. It resonates with that person who's on their baseline, and that helps bring us back to ours. Co-dysregulation, as you imagine, is the opposite thing. When our emotions might be amplified, triggered by another person, and it might move us away from the ability to feel on our baseline, grounded, emotionally stable. You can kind of think of this as emotional contagion. Sometimes it's a tricky one because you don't know why you're feeling more and more anxious or why you're feeling more and more upset, but it may be the energy, if you will, around you, the emotional energy of other people. And so co-dysregulation is a real thing when we're thinking about the holidays and grief, both for you and for your kids. And so want to encourage you to use this, tuck it away for yourself, as it's not only like a luxury or it's not selfish, it's actually key to aiming for peace, and also creating moments of comfort and the feeling of safety for you and your kids. So here's ways to do it. Try recognizing when you or your young person are getting overwhelmed. What's that like for you? Typically, it's in our bodies. Maybe it's anxious. Maybe you want to get up and leave the room. Maybe you don't want to be there anymore. You want to leave, but recognize when you guys are becoming overwhelmed. That's why I said have an exit plan so that you can also leave if you need to. Set limits around this. Back to choose the people you want to be with. Choose the people that in this overwhelming time will feel co-regulating for you. For some people, holding on to traditions or going to family gatherings where there are other people who know your grief, welcome your grief to the room, to the table, and also are not grieving at the same level as you, can be co-regulating. So if that's true for you, then that's part of your plan that you make. If that's not true for you, if it's going to be dysregulating, then you're considering this in your plan. Back to this, I just wanted to highlight it. So this is why it's key at the holidays. There's going to be more dysregulation for each of you. And so spending time recharging your system in ways that are nourishing for you. And as I just said, for some people, that's being with others. And for others, it isn't. These can be small practices. If you're a person who needs a break, then, maybe it means you go for a walk while everyone else is doing a family activity, with the group, or you walk outside and take a few deep breaths. You go, you drink a cup of hot chocolate, you offer your kids hot chocolate. Maybe you're connecting separately with your kids here and there to co-regulate with them. If you're going to a family gathering, maybe you guys have a plan that, at a certain time when something happens, you're just going to come together and you're offering them a little bit of your stability, your groundedness, so you guys can go back and do the things you want to do back and forth. If you can think about regulation just a little bit like a thermostat in a house. And so I think the holidays turn up the temp. And so we want to find these ways to kind of keep it at a comfortable level. Any questions about that before I kind of keep going? That was kind of maybe the headiest part, but it's really, really important because I think we underestimate what's going on in our bodies. And the reason it really matters is you can't override that. You can't override if when your body is becoming overwhelmed, you can't just ignore it and override it and imagine it won't be impacting you or your family. And so tending it really is the way to go. Sophie, any questions, comments?
No questions have come up in the chat yet, just a lot of appreciation for the info you're sharing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful to know it's sort of hitting some of the spots people can welcome. That's the hope.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going. I hope this is just a lot of permission giving, and also there will be some concrete ideas, but I just want to say it again. You and your family can move through the holidays and whatever you need. It can be the shape that you need it to be. You can embrace traditions as a way to stay connected. There are many people who that is what they need to do. You can create new ones. And as I already said, you can skip or you can just simplify celebrating. Here's some questions to begin having that conversation with your kids. So just giving you some stems here, some questions to begin the conversation. Do you have a favorite holiday or holiday memory or traditions that you need us to hold on to this year? Is there anything you're dreading about this year? I think when it comes to these hard conversations, we're always worried that we're going to make people more sad. And in our own grief, we know this isn't true. We know people can't make us more sad by talking about our person or bringing up what's hard. But it's interesting that even as grievers, sometimes we get worried about this. So asking your kids what they're dreading about what they might experience this year will not create more sadness. There's a cheesy phrase that says, what's shareable is bearable. And so as we invite them to share it, it actually becomes more bearable because we're doing it together. And also helps make a plan, when they'll share it with you. So anything you're dreading about this year, what is it you really want to do? What is it you want to skip? What can you take or leave? So even if all you kind of think about coming out of this conversation is that, what do you really want to do? What do you want to skip? And what can you take or leave? Like, what are you flexible in? What are you willing to go with the flow on if other people need it? I think lastly, I think I've said it, I just want to reiterate it. Whatever you choose this year is not set in stone. You can change it next year. You can bring it along with you, or you can return to old traditions next year. You can find new ones. It can change. Okay, I just wanted to give you this resource. Sophie's going to throw the link to this in the chat. So the National Alliance for Children Who Are Grieving has a holiday kit for families. And it's like a 5-pager PDF. And so you may find it helpful, but why I really wanted to offer it to you is there's these 2 pages of questions. And so if you're someone who it's like, I don't actually really know how to begin this conversation with my kids, teens, doesn't matter, right? Young adults, or others, maybe even outside your family who are an important part of your celebrating. There's some great questions here, and they're not all about, what is going to be hard about this season. There are some really neat ways to bring your person in by talking about them if that's what your family's needing. And so I picked this one for here, but there's another page of questions. So a couple ideas off that I've seen families use. So you'll see down at the bottom right, there's a jar. And so you can literally just cut these into strips, put them in a jar, and pull them out. Encourage your kids to pull them out. If you sit down to dinner, then maybe that's a great time. But if you're not sitting down to dinner, then just find a different time. And maybe it's organic and kind of random, and that's okay too. And so, you might want to introduce that as this is a way for us to have a conversation about how to, bring our person into the holidays if we want to do that and figure that out. We want to have a plan, and this is a way we can do it together. And I also have the little phone there because I don't really know many kids who aren't really into their phones, even younger kids. And so kind of a cool, almost non-threatening way to do it is to have a group text thread, you and your family. And, ask their permission ahead of time. I wouldn't just like send a random text like, what are you dreading about the holidays, but check in with them, let them know you have this idea and that you welcome their feedback. I think one piece about this, we're going to talk about compromise because let's be real, it's going to be tricky. So they also have permission not to engage, also have permission not to respond, but you're doing the offering as you make your plan. More than not, I hear kids say they were never even asked. And so I think that's what I hope you take away, is that it is valuable and important to check in with them. You may find they still need you to do the leading, but the check-in. Okay, Sophie put that in the chat, I hope. I want to talk about that fourth piece, which is the rituals of remembering. And I made sure to write here, you can choose. Back to this idea of choice. It is your choice. Shape this how you need to. It may be that this is not a part of this year, and that is okay. This is just a list of possibilities that you can come back to. You may want to grab one that feels right to you. And so I'm just going to kind of gently let them come. And you can find, I think if you Google ideas for remembering rituals at Christmas, at the holidays, you'll find quite a few things. And so this is just a few things off those lists of possibilities. And you may find some that you cringe at, and that's okay. Those aren't for you, but there's a range here. So I think some of these you probably already thought of. Hanging a stocking, and people can put notes in them, notes to the person, or maybe something about a favorite memory of their person. Another one that I've seen a couple of families do, I wanted to highlight, is set out pictures of favorite Christmas memories with the person. And so people have done that all different ways. Like I've seen bulletin boards, I've seen tables, and it just creates just a little bit of connection to the person in the holiday. And again, that just may not be the right thing for you. Making their favorite holiday food. I think when I look back, this was really the only one I could do. Some of these I think would have been too sad and too hard in those first couple of Christmases. So for me, for my family. And but the making their favorite holiday food, my brother he loved our Aunt Jeanette's peanut butter balls. And it was a secret recipe and she never shared it. And I reached out, not the first year, but second year, and asked for the recipe so that I could make them. And it was amazing. It was just the right thing for me. I never could have set a place at the table. That probably would have been too much, but I could make the peanut butter balls, and then I started giving them out every year. So it can become what you want it to become. Find the thing, like that was special to me because, I mean, my brother inhaled those things. He just loved those things. And so find the thing that resonates for you, for your person. And again, what works for you may not work for others. And so there's some choice around for them too, as to whether they participate. These can be offerings. I'm offering you and you can offer them. This is one way. Sophie, if you put the other link in the chat, just as an idea of some of those remembering rituals you can do together as a family. There's this remembering ornament idea from What's Your Grief, the website. And so if you put the link in there, you check the link, there's actually the things that go in the ornament. You kind of have a selection of things, and they might connect to memories. They might connect to emotions for things you're, noticing over the season. It's a really beautiful ornament, and it can be a really meaningful practice to do together. And I also have included this other picture because I want you to know that meaningful doesn't have to be fancy, and it doesn't have to take a lot of energy. So really the remembering ornament's going to take a little planning, and it's going to take a little bit of putting things together. And if you're in that space, it's awesome, And if you're not in that space, you can offer your kids another practice that's really meaningful. I'm thinking of little kids, for example, who've made a rock and they hold and touch that rock when they feel sad and want to feel connected to their person. So this is paint, but honestly, you can use Sharpie. It can be As simple as that. So, okay. Permission slips. I just want to highlight this again. Your kids, your teens may need you to explicitly say that you recognize that they're going to have some excitement over the holidays, and it doesn't mean they're not grieving, and you know that. It's okay to be excited and have a good time during the holidays. And then it's also okay for your kids to know if you're finding it hard, and that while you might be finding it hard, you can still appreciate and feel joy that they're excited. So you might need to just explicitly say this. All right, I didn't want to leave us without some real talk. When I said to Sophie as we were preparing that I was looking through different resources, a lot of them talked about realistic expectations for the holidays, and everything that followed was the most idealistic plan that could be imagined for a grief and holidays. And so I hope you're not leaving feeling like that with some of the offerings I've put out here, but I also want to keep it real, which is it is going to be tough and it may require some compromise. So let's acknowledge that too. How do you all get a little bit of what you're needing when if what you're needing is different? And so here's my sort of the tips around this. It will be ongoing conversations, not one conversation. And I've kind of given you some ideas, some stems about how to begin having those. And part of that will be negotiating what different people are needing and what people are able to be flexible on and what are deal breakers. And so that's another reason why it's critical to include them in the planning of this. Giving choice, as we've already talked about, and a couple other pieces I wanted to add, really practical. Listening for indirect communication. So you may ask one of those great questions, you may text your teenagers on the text thread and you may get no response. But you may be getting responses without them actually directly saying it. And so I'll share an outside of grief context example. I was just with my own family, sat down and said, like my kids are getting older and we don't want to celebrate the holidays in the same way anymore. And so I said, like, what are your expectations for the holidays? Can we each just say what that is so we can kind of adjust to each other where it's possible? And my son, who's 14, was not interested in having the conversation and was kind of a party pooper. And it was irritating for me, to be totally honest, because I thought I was doing this amazing thing, trying to help us, have good expectations for each other. And so we all went around and sort of said a thing that we really wanted to keep doing out of our traditions. And he didn't offer anything. And so again, I was a bit annoyed, to be honest. And then later, he commented on the fact that I had moved some of the holiday decorations that used to go in certain spots. And my first instinct, my first response was like, I don't want them there anymore. I'm done with them there. I don't want to do that anymore. So you can put it in your room. It's actually what I said. You can put it in your room. I'm not putting it there. And then I thought about it and I thought, oh, actually, that's the thing he needs. He's not able to directly tell me that, but he needs the holiday decorations to be the way they always were. He doesn't care if we do gingerbread houses. He doesn't care if we watch Christmas movies, but he needs the decorations in the right place. So sort of being a bit of a detective when your kids aren't giving you that direct feedback. And so I'll be honest, the snowman moved back to the spot I don't really want it, but it's important to him. On that note, when you're considering this negotiation of, I need to go to grandma's because I feel connected and supported there, but you don't want to go because it's going to be overwhelming for you and you're not going to feel supported and connected there. You also don't want to maybe leave your young person home for 3 hours on Christmas Day by themselves. I don't know. I guess you guys can have that conversation. But something to tuck away and consider is that if you're asking of someone else to do something they really don't want to do, it's one thing to ask for 20 to 30 minutes of their energy and their effort and their attention. And it's another thing to ask for 2 hours or 6 hours. So same for you, if you have other people that have some expectations of you and are wanting you to do something, just back to that first slide about realistic expectations. What's reasonable? It's reasonable for your kids or for you to try to shift with these small pieces if it's really not something you're totally stoked about, but you're willing to kind of go with it for each other. Um, all day, 4 hours, that's a big ask. And so you just might want to consider that as you guys are doing the negotiation. You might even want to say that, as you guys are having the conversation. I think just lastly on this, I want to just again highlight, as I was talking about the nervous system and our regulation, and we need to be with people, we need to be around people who help us stay regulated or are co-regulating us. This is true for your kids too. And so really listening to what it is that they're negotiating for. Again, as I said, I find that kids often do have really good ideas about what they might be needing this year. And a lot of kids just don't get asked. So I encourage you to ask your kids. Coming to the end here, I just love this infographic. That's lots more fun than my slides with words. You could make your own ways. Maybe that's your plan. Maybe this is the title of your plan, your short little bullet point plan. Ways we're going to survive the holiday season this year. What are those going to be? And so, even this, I love this one that said, wear headphones when you're out in public to avoid holiday music. Oftentimes that is like infuriating during the holiday season, hearing, have a holly jolly Christmas. I won't keep singing for you, but, to hear these really celebratory, upbeat songs, it's just not a match for where you are. And it's overwhelming. It creates dysregulation. It creates, stress. So, finding these little practical, creative ways is what I hope this showed. And you can encourage your kids to think about these things too. You can think about it with them. In my experience, both as a parent and also in counseling, families who are grieving, kids do benefit from what I call a menu. Sometimes they don't know, but when you offer choices, then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that could fit for me. And so I think that's your role as you lead your family into this season, to shape it, find rhythms that aim for peace and not joy. It's okay too. For the first time ever, I'm on time. So
Here we are.
Oh my God, I can't believe it. So I want to invite your thoughts, your questions. They don't have to be questions. Comments, ways you've done this. If maybe you're not in your first Christmas, maybe you've done this a few times. I don't know. Do people have, you could offer suggestions to the group of people who are here, who may still be looking for rhythms and the shape of the holidays for them. So you could even turn on your mic and come on if you need to, but you can throw it in the chat. So I just want to check in, Sophie, if there is anything in the chat we need to tend to before moving to Q&A.
There hasn't been anything in the chat. I'd love to hear what people are taking away from today's session, what is resonating with folks. And so we're going to launch a poll, but as Shanna invited, if anyone's wanting to share ideas or things that percolated for them during today's session, please hop on the chat or turn on your microphone. I'll launch this poll as well to just let us know what you're taking away from today.
As you're looking, I just want to offer one other thing, which is, so I was an older teenager when my brother died, and my parents did it really imperfectly. I think they would say that, and it's okay. It's okay, so you do the best you can and have these conversations with your kids, and like the family who really should have just gone to McDonald's. Sometimes you don't know till you've tried it, and it will be okay. So people are giving feedback, which is great.
Yeah.
So glad there's
Shanna, we've had a question come up in our poll. Someone has shared that this is our fourth Christmas. Okay. And she hasn't asked her kids what they're needing, and they haven't really said anything about their dad during the holiday. And so she's asking, do I start now? This holiday season, this fourth year, do I start?
Yeah, absolutely. It's never too late to start that conversation. In my case, it's been almost 20 years, and I would still love the conversation. So you can have this conversation now at year 4, you can have it at year 10. You probably have it every year because it will change. Absolutely. And one thing I didn't acknowledge, so I don't know this person's story, but I also want to say, I meant to say this earlier, that it's a myth that the holidays are always great for everybody. That it feels connected, that it's so wonderful, that it's all happy memories. And that is not true. And so if the holidays were actually full of a lot of stress, a lot of tension, a lot of conflict, which, in times of stress, which the holidays are, even before grief, there may have been more eruptions. It may not have been an enjoyable time for the family. And so you may actually find the opposite of a lot of things I've talked about. There might be a lot of relief that first Christmas, that you're not navigating those things. And so, but to speak to that question, yeah, start now. You're not too late in any way. And, your kids might be surprised. And that's awesome. That's awesome. And it's very possible that they wouldn't have been able to have a conversation before now. So it's okay too. Yeah. Yeah. Love that.
Great.
Do you want
I'm just going to go
share
ahead
that?
and exactly end our poll here and share our results, so people can get an idea of, what other people are taking away from today as well.
Yeah.
So there we see, that permission giving, it looks like Shanna was really resonated with people to make choices that fit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Love that it. We get to choose what fits for us this year, and it doesn't have to be written in stone. It doesn't have to be what we choose every year. Yeah, those are the big takeaways.
And offer that to your kids.
Everyone.
Yeah, offer that to your kids. This is what we're doing this year. This is still what we need. And I'm thinking of one young person who recently said, as we were having this conversation, his mom and him, and he described kind of what he was missing. And I said, it sounds like what you're wanting is to add in some excitement again. He said, yeah, that's it. So back to that, giving your kids that permission. If you're at year 4, or year 1, it doesn't matter. But just giving that permission. Yeah, it's okay to add back in excitement. Okay, how do we do that? And, for the parent, it was like, oh, how do I do that? Because I don't genuinely, feel that. And back to the compromise. What are you able to do for small chunks of time? What does that mean to your young person? I think it typically does mean maybe, a little less enthusiasm than we're imagining. I think it usually looks like some pleasure, that there is a sense that you are taking pleasure in being with them and their enjoyment of it. It's usually enough. Okay, I don't know if everyone else has it on their screen. I need to. So let's just, I don't know if there's another comment in the chat, but I just want to shift fully to the Q&A piece while we have time for other voices here. So.